Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Poddin My Noggin. I'm your host, CK Sims, and I am here today with the very brilliant but slightly controversial Dr. Fred Moss. Dr. Moss, thanks for being here with us today.
CK, thanks for having me.
I want to tell you for something. So, I make a habit of not doing any form of research of my guests besides a quick check in the beginning when they reach out or I find them just to see if they fit within the show, right? The reason I do that is because when I get on to have a conversation with them, I kind of want it to be organic and authentic and that sort of thing. So I'm waiting for an appointment this morning, parked downtown Montreal, and I'm like, okay, let's just do a quick look, make sure, whatever. And I'm watching some of your YouTube videos. And so I'm very in touch with my bias, right? So I realize that I have biases, conscious and self-conscious. I'm watching some of your videos, and I'm like, oh, wait a second. I'm not sure if this person fits. Should I cancel this person? And I'm sitting there in my car, and I was like, hold up a second. I'm like, before you make any decisions about anything, you need to at least do more research. You don't just cancel on something. But the thought came. So anyway, I go and I have my appointment, and I'm ruminating on it. And I was like, you know what? I'm like, he's a human being. He's got 40 years as a psychiatrist. He has something to say. It may not fit technically with what your belief system is, but doesn't he have a right to say it? So here we are. But I did more research since I've come home to understand your methodology. So I'm like, okay, wait now. I'm starting to actually jive with some of the things that you're saying here. So let's talk about it. What is your belief system around mental health?
Well, it's a great question and a very broad question. And here's the story. Mental health is something that is accessible to every one of us, whether or not we have a diagnosis.
Yes.
A diagnosis does not decrease or eliminate or even in any way disrupt your capacity to be mentally healthy. Not in any way. Just because somebody else told you that you have a condition, here's the story. Just because somebody told you that you have a condition, even if that somebody has lots of years of experience and a degree from a top-notch university, doesn't mean that it pigeonholes you into being incapable of doing anything. And the truth is that mental health is totally available to each and every human being. There's just a matter of certain practices that you should take, that you would take if you were interested in maintaining your own mental health. So mental health is a conversation. That's really what it is. Mental health and mental illness is very arbitrary, very vague on its edges. How do I know that? Well, if somebody is diagnosed with a mental illness in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they move to Auckland, New Zealand, or they move to Reykjavik, or they move to Singapore, then they might not have that diagnosis anymore. And if that's true, then that's a very watery, vague diagnosis, to say the least. If I have a broken arm in Singapore and I move to Auckland, guess what? I still have a broken arm. And if I move to Little Rock, I still have a broken arm. But mental illness is really in the eyes of the actual beholder or the diagnostician who has decided that you're outside the range of normal, when in fact that diagnostician has no idea what normal is, because none of us do. So we call the notion of abnormal, we are very audacious with the use of abnormal, with the idea that something is not normal, as if we know what normal is. And, in order to be any bit convinced that somebody's abnormal, you better have an idea of what normal is. And the fact is that none of us really have a good definition universally of what normal is as a human being. So mental health and mental illness is a cultural phenomena, and a phenomena mostly based on the power of the diagnostician and the willingness of the receiver to accept that diagnosis and then walk into the world as if they have it.
Okay. So I hear what you're saying. So we're going to just anybody listening at home, before you jump to conclusions, we're going to talk this through, right? To try and figure it out. because I do agree with what you said. So you noticed
Good.
in the 80s that there was a change in the psychological realm of things, and things became very diagnostic and started treating with medications and that
Yeah,
sort of
thank you, Prozac.
Yes, exactly. So now, are you saying, and I want to clear this up for people listening at home, and even for myself, so are you saying that, okay, we have our psychiatrist, our psychologist, our counseling therapist, all of those things. Are they of no use?
No, they're certainly of use, especially if they can understand what is key for healing in the universe. Now, here's the deal: psychologists, social workers, doctors, therapists, they're not of greater use than other humans. They don't have extra special skills that gives them access to the curative properties of what it really takes to assist somebody to find mental health. So the truth is, you don't need a degree to help somebody actually access and optimize their life.
Oh, I agree with this. I
As
agree
it
with
turns out, the key to all healing is a human connection. And when we can connect with somebody, actually listen to them, and express ourselves authentically and genuinely with them, then what happens at that moment when that connection is made is extraordinary. We've all experienced this at some point in our life. That moment, that second where you're with somebody and you get, wow, I'm gotten, or wow, I get them. There is a massive amount of healing of our so-called mental condition when our expression, our capacity to connect with another person, when those channels are open, a new level of mental health right now is achieved. It does not require a bunch of degrees. It does not require a bunch of diagnoses, and it certainly does not require a bunch of medication.
So I'm still over here, right? So I'm going to ask questions. So like, how does this apply then to say someone who has schizophrenia?
I don't have it that somebody has schizophrenia. Here's
Explain.
the story. Once you have schizophrenia, now you look, if you walk into a doctor and you tell the doctor, I have a set of symptoms, they include, I have super dry skin, I have a huge nose, I love peanuts, I drink way too much water, and I'm clumsy as an ox in a china shop. And they go and look up this diagnosis and they tell you that they have determined that you are nothing less than an elephant. We have those criteria. You met them. You now walk away with this notion that you are an elephant and you get treated as an elephant. With schizophrenia, the medications and the diagnosis itself actually perpetuates that condition. The Moss method talks about 20 separate different behaviors that we can all do that, I don't know anyone with schizophrenia who's not been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And once you get diagnosed with schizophrenia, now you get to walk through the world as if you have this thing called schizophrenia, and everyone who needs to know knows that. But not only that, you're likely on a treatment protocol that supports the notion that you have schizophrenia, and taking medicines that if the average person took, they would get the symptoms of schizophrenia.
Well, I mean, okay, I'm not going to disagree with you on that point because lithium.
Lithium is not for schizophrenia, but I hear you.
Do they apply it to schizophrenia?
No, lithium is typically for bipolar disorder or manic disorder, and certainly causes its own level of manic depression in its own right.
Fair. So, okay, this is fascinating to me. So, I have a couple questions.
Please bring them.
All of the work that, the founding fathers of psychology did, all of this, is this moot to you?
No. Am I the first person to ever say this? Of course not. There are many thousands of people, not very many, who maintain an MD degree, though, because our lifeblood is based on diagnosing and medicating.
Yes.
But if you go back to the founding fathers, they weren't medicating anybody. They weren't even diagnosing people. What they were doing is meeting people where they were. If you look at Carl Rogers, if you look at Irving Yalom, if you look at C.G. Jung, if you look at Sigmund Freud, if you look at any of the so-called founding fathers of psychology or psychiatry, you'll notice that they wanted more than anything else to connect with that person who came to them for assistance. Whatever method they could do to actually connect with them was where the healing took place. And there are no founding fathers who would disregard that. As far as biological psychiatry, as you already mentioned, that blasted forward in 1987 with the advent of Prozac. Before that, biological psychiatry was not really a thing, not at all. But when Prozac came, we started thinking that conditions, especially when we were miserable, if we were living an unpleasant experience, if we were uncomfortable or miserable, we started believing that it's our problem. If we're uncomfortable, it's because there's something wrong with us. And we bought that hook, line, and sinker as a society. As Krishnamurti so brilliantly put forth, it is no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. This is what we deal with each and every day. We have hurdles and obstacles and challenges that are overwhelming and have never been at this level. And the idea that we're uncomfortable in here and it's our problem is really absolutely ludicrous. The truth is, of course, we're uncomfortable, and you're never going to meet anybody in the present day and age who wouldn't admit that they are very uncomfortable several times, even per day. But we don't blame them for being sick, being uncomfortable, being confused, being disrupted, being distracted, being depressed, being afraid, being nervous. Welcome to humanity. That's why the name of my company and my brand is Welcome to Humanity. That's what Welcome to Humanity is really all about.
My wheels are turning in real life. So like I'm thinking and processing of what you're saying, right?
Good.
So it's not to negate. So okay, to recap real quick. Since 87, the diagnosing and the medicating really blew up.
Exploded forward, correct.
Okay. And so this is now our new norm, which I would agree with. Like, I mean, I was born in 81, but like, fine, 87. So you're saying in the absence of that, if we were to go back to 87 and say whoever invented Prozac or whoever, whatever, we were to remove that from the equation and we were to have kept things less about diagnostics and medicating, but more about meeting the person where they're at. Mm-hmm. How do you envision the next 40 years would have turned out to be?
Oh, it would have been entirely different. But here's the truth. It's not like things were great going into 87 either.
No.
So let's make that very clear. It's not like they were on sweet road until 87 and then they got off and they went into the diagnostic biological psychiatry world. But if we really rode on the heels of some of our amazing forefathers, like Carl Rogers, like Irving Yalom, the humanistics, the people who really got that at the essence of all mental health is a human connection. If we really rode into the unconditional positive regard that some of these physicians and psychologists have put forth, the whole version of what mental health would be taken on its ear. If we never would have bought the idea that misery is caused by a chemical imbalance, the entire world would look different. The entire world, not just a world of mental health per se, but actually the whole world. This thing has now infected, this way of thinking has now infected us to being as if it's real. So people actually ask questions like, what about somebody who has, and then names a condition that was actually invented less than 20 years ago? It's like, well, they didn't have it 21 years ago because it didn't exist. It actually, these diagnoses get created frequently after the treatments are designed so that they can find something to actually take the treatments, because very often the medications actually induce, increase, perpetuate, and in some cases actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. Now, that's a really tough pill to swallow, excuse the pun, but as it turns out, if you took those medicines and you were never diagnosed with those conditions, you are very likely to acquire those conditions anyways now. That's how the business model is built. The business model is built to put the cart in front of the horse, and then you don't know it when you're taking these medicines and the treatment that actually your condition is worsening chronically, and you believe that you have a condition that's worsening chronically, that the treatment's not helping adequately.
So if I want to make sure I'm getting this right. So you're really saying that this is a big pharma industry?
No, I'm not.
That's what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah, I hear that that's what it sounds like, but that's not what I'm saying. Big pharma isn't even a thing. That's an entity that is non-addressable. And pills are also not a thing. That's like rat poison is a problem. Rat poison is not a problem. Eating rat poison is a problem, for sure.
Okay, wait now. So clarification, you're saying the practitioners are.
No, I'm not. I'm not even saying that. They're doing their job. They're doing exactly what they're trained to do. And the disclaimer that's due right now is for your listeners who are pretty sure that they are diagnosed completely perfectly and have the great therapist and a great treatment plan. They love their medicine and wouldn't trade it for the world. By all means, please keep doing what you're doing.
Yes.
This is not about cover your butt, by the way. This is not a liability comment. This is a true and honest, real comment. If you have found anywhere in life where you're sure you're at the end of the road towards satisfaction, please keep doing that, because it is really rare to find that anywhere in life. So let's make that really clear. I'm not telling people where medicines are so-called working that they're not working. I'm not arguing with people about that. What I am saying is that as soon as you believe there's something wrong with you, that's when you go to the doctor. You go to the doctor to get confirmation that there's something wrong with you. Unlike any other field inside medicine, when I, as a psychiatrist, tell somebody that there's nothing wrong with them, they get pissed. That doesn't happen in any other subspecialty.
I would believe that.
People come to be confirmed that there's something wrong with them. And once they get that confirmation through a diagnosis, they actually often get to relinquish their responsibility for the things in their life that aren't working. For instance, they get over angry with their spouse. They yell too often at their kids. They can't get their work done during the day. They feel awkward in a social environment. Whatever the situation is, they can't stop thinking about a past trauma. Whatever their situation is, now that they have a diagnosis, they feel comforted that, hey, it's not me, it's my alphabet soup diagnosis that I now have.
So what I'm striving to do here is to get this right in my head. So it's not the practitioners.
Nope.
It's not big pharma. It's the idea that we've bought into is the problem.
The idea that we have bought into that there is something wrong with me when I'm uncomfortable.
I am there now.
Good.
I'm there. So, okay. And what's really interesting is liability issues wasn't even my thing, because my show is not to do harm, but just to have great conversations about whatever. So I will share with you that, and this is where it's really interesting, where part of my experience completely goes with what you're saying, and then another part goes against. But here we are. I did a lot of drugs in my early 20s. Okay, struggled with depression and anxiety. Knew I was depressed. Decided I wanted to try a pill. Went to a GP. Started said pill, citalopram, 20 milligrams.
Yeah.
No, I think it was 40 to start, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, we're moving through life. Ever since I was a child, I did think there was something wrong with me. Like, my brain didn't work.
Of course, you wouldn't have taken the pill every day if you didn't think there was something wrong with you.
Yeah, like I didn't function the way other people functioned.
That's what you think.
I didn't learn the way other people learned.
That's what you think.
Well, fair, right? This is how it kept showing up in my life.
That's what you think. That was the conclusion you came up with by comparing your insides to everyone else's outsides. That's the conclusion that you came up with.
Absolutely. So then at 30 years old, I went and I saw a psychiatrist. It was my first time seeing a psychiatrist. And we spent I think 14 hours, 14 visits together. And then he went back, right to the beginning and all of these things. And so I was diagnosed at this time.
Yeah, for sure.
I was diagnosed with type 2 bipolar disorder.
There you go. You go to a barbershop enough time, you get a haircut. That's the way that works.
Fair. So but here's where gets interesting for me. So the two things happened in that moment.
Yeah.
One, I did have a sigh of relief. I'm going to tell you, I did have a sigh of relief. Wait, there is something wrong with me. Okay, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Two, the psychiatrist decided to throw a lot of medication at me.
That's the right answer when you accept that diagnosis.
Okay, But so, and I'm going to tell the people at home, and once again, this is not for you to go and be like, well, I don't need anything. So threw a lot of medication at me, but I had already done a lot of like CBT work, had gone and learned about Carl Rogers, unconditional positive regard, all of these things. So I decided in that moment, after I had my like, oh shit, I'm type 2 bipolar, but also it's kind of makes sense. I went in a deep dive, I did research. I'm like, shit, okay, look. I'm like this is my life. These do line up. However, I will not be a victim to this diagnosis. I will learn to pivot and live a better version of my life from this diagnosis. So I didn't take it and be like, okay, well, now I have type 2 bipolar disorder. I don't have to worry about keeping a job.
But when
I don't.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you say from this diagnosis, you certainly accepted it and integrated it as being part of who you are.
Yes, I did, but without saying, without the victimology, I guess. It was
Well,
like, okay,
what did it represent?
it just, I think it, I think for me, and if I'm being honest and vulnerable with you, at that moment, it just sort of represented an answer that maybe I had been searching for 30 years. And to me, it felt like the validation because I had struggled. And so it validated my struggle. Okay, you have this, diagnosis.
Disorder.
And so, pardon?
Disorder.
Disorder, yes. And like, okay, shit, I got it. Now what do I do? So I moved on. Here's the problem.
Yeah.
I did lots of great work over the next couple of years. Between my GP at that time and the psychiatrist, they kept switching medications. And at one point, at 35, I had lived in darkness, and so this is where I believe, and I totally buy into some of what you're saying. For several years, I was on close to 12 medications to manage my type 2 bipolar disorder. God, I can't even begin to tell you these medications were killing me, and almost succeeded because at 35 I tried to take my life. Okay, I failed, thankfully, and spent 3 days in a short stay unit. Went through the process and then was like, okay, do I get out and just do a better job, or do I get out and try something different? And I won't get into the nitty gritty, but I did decide to get out and try something different. And I'll tell you what I tried different. Went to my doctor and I said, I'm off everything. I want zero medication. There was arguments back and forth. And I said, you know what? I'm doing this with or without you. So you let me know if you want to join this journey. If not, I'm done. Right?
Yeah, you don't need a doctor's permission to come off of medicine.
Exactly. So now I went off medication. I do not recommend this for anybody without consulting your doctor. Just as that's a liability statement. Please don't do it without, that lasted for about 2 weeks because a part of this cocktail I had been taking was a benzodiazepine. It was a clonazepam. So I went back to the doctor and I said, listen, I need 0.5 milligrams because I had been taking 3 milligrams, 0.5 milligrams of clonazepam. But she's like, this is below therapeutic value. Don't care. I just need a little bit in my system to not go through benzo flu. There we're going. And then 6 months later, I went back. I did a lot of work. I went back and I said, I want 10 milligrams. I was at 60. 10 milligrams of citalopram. And once again, below therapeutic value. Perfect. That's fine. I just need a little bit of something in my system to keep me regulated. And that's the end of the story. I will tell you that it has been almost 9 years and I have not changed that medication structure one bit.
I got it.
And so when you said that earlier about if you found something that's working for you, but I question all the time, who would I be now after all the growth I've done without those two pieces. And I ponder this, right? I tell you. So one day I think I will take that leap and figure it out. But
thank you for the story.
It's the over medication, I think, that has always been an issue for me. Even with physical health, I have type 2 diabetes. I take metformin because I take metformin and I'm over 40. I should also be taking a cholesterol pill, even though my cholesterol pill range is within range, just on the little bit of the higher end. So I fight a lot of that stuff, and I advocate for myself when it comes to medications now. But I had to go through that experience to get there.
Yeah.
So this is a really interesting conversation because I want to continue talking, and I want to talk to you about, but we're going to take a break and we're going to come back. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Life in Stitches by CK Sims. Available for purchase in paperback and ebook on all major platforms. Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining in to Poddin My Noggin. Before the break, we were talking to Dr. Fred Moss, who is a very interesting person and has very interesting views. I might have annoyed a bit with some of my questions, but
not at all.
It was your view is controversial, I would think. You mentioned this before. How you still have an active MD license?
Of course. Why wouldn't I?
But so my question is, and just to recap real quick, is that your perspective is that the world population has bought into this idea that because we are uncomfortable in our lives, we innately think there's something wrong with us.
Right.
And so when we go to see someone like yourself, a psychologist, even a GP, we're looking for answers. When we
we're looking for confirmation. We are not looking for answers.
Confirmation. Fair. Okay, I like that. We're looking for confirmation. And when we don't get that, we get upset.
When we get an answer that you're okay, that you're just human, that's when you might get upset.
So for me, if I came to you, like we were talking about before the break, my 14 sessions with this dude.
Yeah.
You're a non-diagnosing doctor, right?
I know how to diagnose. I still, sometimes in some of my jobs I've diagnosed well over 30 or 40,000 people in my life. I know how to diagnose. They count on me to diagnose. I don't like diagnosing. I'm a non-diagnosing, non-medicating psychiatrist at heart.
Okay, perfect. So I want to bring me into the picture for a second. Yeah. I come to you, I tell you my life story, obviously without telling you my life story.
Yeah, you just did. Yeah.
But yes, what would be your non-diagnosing, non-medicating treatment plan? What would that look like?
Just like this. We've already started it.
We
already started it. I already have loosened the jar with you. We already have started looking at another way you got to be who you got to be. And we've already started really looking at the controversy of whether or not those two medicines are truly required, and your story about being on 14 of them and being in short stay and trying to take your life, which I hear, by the way, and your whole story. We would get an access to your story and the way that you look at life. And I would work to connect with you such that you would be interested in the approach or the thinking that I have, enough to relate, enough to feel like I hear you. And from that connection, and we might even do this from here, if you were truly interested in coming off of Klonopin and citalopram, we could do that. We could actually do that. We would be able to do that because what's really here is the possibility that you would be way better off without that medicine. And you know that's entirely possible, of course. It's entirely possible. It's one of the possibilities out there. It's a possibility. I'm not saying that it's an automatic. I'm saying that, of course, any of us could be like exponentially better in our way we're handling life than how we're handling it today. It is conceivable that those two medicines aren't doing you as well as you think they are, though they are preventing you from going out into the depths of where you've been before. It seems there's a direct correlation between you being where you are now and not being down in the depths and being 9 years at the same dose and all of that, that has you think that these medicines are holding you at bay. So that's really
medicine. I know that for a fact. It's not just the medicines.
No, of course not. It's a working,
right? But
it's not the medicine. It's entirely possible that the medicines aren't doing you nearly the service that you have hung on them. Not maybe. It's just possible.
Yeah. I'm totally open to that possibility as well.
All right. Well, then this is where we would be if we had our first meeting. We would only be right here. We're already into what, your listeners would already be into exactly what we would be doing on our first meeting, which is just exploring other alternatives as to the way that you think you got to be here and whatever rock solid notion you have about what's so or what isn't so, we would disrupt.
Okay. So we disrupt the notions that I had in my head already.
Right. And then we just start getting the humanity of the both of us. That we're both stumbling, bumbling, and tumbling through a world of massive confusion, challenge, obstacles, and hurdles every day, every minute. And neither of us know what it's like to be normal.
Okay. All right. I'm following. So then.
Except to say that I, as I am normal. No matter what.
You, for Fred Moss.
And you, the way you are normal.
Okay. So that
you don't have a deficiency, you don't have a disease, you don't have a disorder at all. You're just you. You're just you. Exactly. This is the potpourri. This is the smorgasbord. This is the essence, the entire the whole enchilada of what it means to be you. All of this, including your massive confusion, including your inability to function in a social environment, whatever your issues were, including your thinking disruptions, including the fact that you may even have heard voices, which all of us do, but most of us call it intuition. If we really just reorganize this, we have a possibility of empowering you in areas of life that up until now you have felt defective. We have that possibility.
So we're just stripping it all away, essentially.
We're just bringing you back to we're stripping away the nonsense that has been layered on top of who you really have been the whole time.
Okay, I think I have it. So the idea is that innately, without medications, without diagnoses, without all of those things, we are exactly who we're meant to be.
And life is doing exactly what it's doing. Life is doing exactly what it's doing, indeed. You are who you are, and life is what it is. And my cat Winston couldn't agree more.
Perfect. I love it when a cat agrees. Which I saw that you have 3. And
I do.
I love cats. So okay. All right. So we're looking at the fact that if we look at the world as the whole world population, all of the mental health issues, and not just mental health you mentioned, it could be applied right across the board. We're obviously receiving messaging for decades that you have your atypical and your neurospicy or neurodivergent type people. So yeah. I think in my head, most of the world, if you will, would probably say that they're neurodivergent.
Well, this is a term that's less than 10 years old. So they weren't neurodivergent 11 years ago.
No, I would agree with that. I absolutely agree with that.
If they weren't but if they had a broken arm 11 years ago, it would have been a broken arm. This is a well-developed conversation that now is accepted as the prevailing conversation of truth because it has such a hip name called neurodivergent.
Yes, but here's the thing. I'm not trying to negate anything. What I'm trying to say is I think that for so many years, there was this ideology of what normal looked like.
Yeah.
Right.
What was that?
Well, I think the society media would have painted, married, good jobs, 3 kids, white picket fence. Like there was this normal picture that was
If
painted.
that was normal, that was about 3% of the population. That would make 97% of the population abnormal.
Well, and see, that's what I'm getting at, right? Because if that, in my mind, and from people I've spoken to, and all of these things, is that they do not feel on the inside like what would be considered normal.
Exactly.
And we've created this
arbitrary.
It is arbitrary because
what is
normal.
Exactly.
And I thought for a long time, for people at home and for yourself, I thought for a long time that I was abnormal.
I get it.
And
most people do, by the way. Almost everybody does. It's a sign of being normal to know that you're abnormal.
I will take that. I enjoy that thought process, actually. So yeah, but I fought for years to be in that sphere of normal. And why couldn't I be normal? Why can't I just get up and be okay with going to work?
Now you're talking about something this is something that 98% of the people struggle with.
And that's a lot of people. So, I mean,
it is.
It's just interesting for me. And so what I love is that after receiving the diagnosis, it did something different. I think, I don't know what it does in everybody else, but I just know in me, it was I don't want type 2 bipolar to define me. It might be something that I have, but it is not all of who I am as a person.
Okay.
So after the attempt on my life, I went off medication. I started up the 2 that I told you that I haven't changed since, but I did the work. And the work was recognizing that I had a really nasty internal dialogue. Just my thought process was shit. The way I spoke, I apologize if you don't swear. I do swear sometimes. But it was just a really not nice place to live in my brain.
Understood. Yeah.
And it took a long time of cognitive restructuring to catch those thoughts, reframe them to be at minimum neutral, positive if possible, to turn my whole life around. And so now I'm here at 43. My normal is feeling happy and positive. I look at life very differently. I found great success in relationships, friendships. There are no signs of bipolar disorder present in my life.
Yeah. And why do you think you have it?
Well, maybe I don't. I don't know.
If it isn't here, what support do you have for having it?
Well, can you have it and then not have it? Does it go away?
That's really interesting, isn't it? Isn't it interesting that you have zero signs of it, yet you're willing to say that you still have it?
Well, here's the thing. I will say this. I guess this is a backpedal. Because there are no signs in my life if you were to look from the outside into the inside, right? However, I do recognize when I'm starting to go into an upswing. Traditional, right? I do recognize it, but now it has no control. It's oh, hi, all right, we're going to just
thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, just chill and move along. And then when for me, I just, and this is weird, and I rarely go this deep, but I think for the longest time, I just felt that I was a very high functioning depressive. That was my normal. That's what I thought, right?
Yeah. We like to label ourselves.
Pardon?
We like to label ourselves.
Oh my God. Human condition, right? So it's just really interesting to have this conversation because I don't know, and nor have I given great amount of thought to what CK would look like without those 2 medications, right?
Or without those 2 diagnoses.
There you go. Fair. I don't know what that would have looked like either.
Could look like now.
Well, and that's just the interesting part because I look at my life and the trajectory of it and the things that have happened. I don't necessarily regret them because they have brought me to a place where I look around, I just feel content and happy. I want to grow, I want to experience and all of those things. But I'm very happy with who I am as a human. I'm very happy with what my surroundings are. And
Good.
Do I wake up every day happy? No, but that's
No,
part of
but
life, you know?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like you're gonna have your ups, your downs, your bad days, your good days, but I don't catastrophize them anymore.
Right.
And
Maybe,
I would give the power of that more
yeah,
to the work I did on CBT and cognitive restructuring than to the medication that I was taking
yeah.
and am taking.
So the next challenge, if you allow me, host of this show, to ask you a question, which would
Yeah,
be
go.
consider the possibility that you've never had a diagnosis
Okay.
at all. You've always just been CK, and and that you're not treating an underlying condition at all, not at all. There never was one, nor will there ever be one. This starts being where it really gets interesting. It is precisely in that leap. And I'm only asking you to consider it. And all the pushbacks that you have about, wait, but Dr. Fred, Dr. X told me, and Dr. Y told me, and I got experiences to support it. Listen to what I'm saying first.
Yeah.
When you consider the possibility that you have never had a mental health condition, that you were just told and then agreed, that's all that really happened. You were told and given a set of criteria, just like dry skin, big nose, peanut addiction, water manifestation, and trouble in a china shop. You were told that is the criteria required to be an elephant. And then you walked away with, dude, I am an elephant. And it really helps to know that. And then you treated yourself like your preconceived notion of what an elephant is. And you let everyone who needed to know that you were that kind of elephant. And you were pleased to know that you were an elephant because that explains your dry skin and your big nose at the very least. You might be able to work on your water addiction and your peanut addiction and maybe reduce that, and no better than to go into a china shop because you're a freaking elephant after all. But in the truth, you got dry skin and a big nose, and that's not going away. And therefore, there's your essence of your diagnosis of an elephant. And you walk away with that and allegory. You walk away with that metaphor that you had and still have the elephant diagnosis. And that's why you take anti-peanut medication.
I feel like if you weren't my favorite therapist, I would adore the shit out of you.
Thank you. And by the way, this is how I do for the listeners. This is, you asked me what happens in the first meeting. When someone opens up the door to capture what's here, and then we can have this conversation, the jar loosens.
So it's really, I don't know if I could unpack and fully answer that question in one sitting.
No,
Because
it's not going to, I can't do it all in one sitting. I can loosen the jar in one sitting.
Yeah, so you've loosened the jar to like because now I know I'll write about this and I will jot down like what my thoughts are because like I get what you're saying and it makes sense to me.
Good.
And then I'm just trying to think about like how many years I wasted thinking there was something wrong with me.
Thank you for going here. Let me stop you there. As you said moments ago, that I now get to reflect back to you as a quote that you made. It is not up to you to trade in or to think you traded that you wasted even 1 minute of your life up until now. That is not up to you to decide retroactively that you wasted any minutes, including the times when you were stoned in your 20s, including the stupid crap you did when you were doing stupid crap, including the people that you've hurt and yourself, including all the mistakes that you made, including all the ventures you took that failed miserably. All good. Every piece of those things is humanity and life. Welcome to humanity. When you get that, you don't have to give yourself the noise that therefore, since I've been riding around with this diagnosis for 30 years, never had it. And therefore, what would my life have been? Oh my goodness, I must have wasted those 30 years if I'd never had this diagnosis in the first place. Instead of giving yourself that form of limiting beliefs, of retroactive regret for your behaviors, this is not an invitation to do that. This is an invitation to come to grips with right now, with life being exactly as it is, and you being a man who went through everything that you went through to get to where you are now, with the possibility of opening up all sorts of new roads starting right this minute, in directions that you didn't even know existed.
Okay, so I get what you're saying. You're saying let's think of it from the perspective of if today I decide I don't have type 2 bipolar disorder. I was
Okay.
never
And you
what
never had it.
like moving forward.
Yeah, you never had it.
So a little bit better of a pill to swallow, bad pun, but yes, you used it earlier, but yes. So a little bit easier to handle when it comes to thinking about what that might look like. So just for people listening at home, if you've never been to therapy, I highly recommend it. I will always be a big proponent of therapy, but advocate for yourself. What you just saw Dr. Moss do was build therapeutic alliance. And like it was happening just as he's speaking there, he's coming in and he's making sure I feel really reassured that we're not going to go back and regret, right? I don't spiral out of control because I'm like, whoa, I just wasted, all these years. No. Just think about from now moving forward, if you had no diagnosis, what would life be? Now I have a question for you. You tell me, you've said this a couple times, you say it on your site, which everybody listening, I'm going to link it as well, is welcometohumanity.net. You can see everything you need to see about Dr. Fred Moss on there. You can get his books. You can even book sessions with him. I think you can book sessions with him.
For sure.
And then he has programs and all of that stuff as well. But so my question is, so if, let's just say, hypothetically, I were to say to you, okay, you know what? Let's do this. Let's take the lid off the jar. And I don't have I never had those diagnoses.
Mm-hmm.
What you've mentioned a couple times that, experiencing life in ways you had never imagined or things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
What do I what?
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So when you get, when you come off and you come in and you say, let's lift the lid off, what I don't want you to say is, let's lift the lid off and see if I really had bipolar. That's not it. It's like, let's forget that I ever had bipolar. It can't be, let's see how this goes. Let's try it out. It has to be a full buy-in, if you will, that you were never really carrying any kind of diagnosis. So once we do that, we start looking at, different practices. Behind me, we have both my books, The Creative 8 and Find Your True Voice. And, I'm writing a third book. And here's the thing. The Moss method, it really aims at things that are age old. I didn't invent any of them. I just compiled them. They include gratitude and meditation and eating organic food and really watching what you eat, drinking a ton of water, at least half your body weight in ounces, getting out in nature, being creative, art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening. It includes taking care of pets. It includes actually being of service to other people, helping somebody do anything, helping anyone do anything. It includes pampering yourself, watching your sleep hygiene. It includes reading actual books instead of ebooks. It includes actually journaling. It includes a lot of things like that, none of which I made up. Not at all. It includes yoga and Tai Chi or Qigong or the non-combative martial arts. It includes there are 20 separate things. I think I just named about 13 of them. And there's a whole list. Now, what do you get when you do those things? You get a life that works. Straight up.
I'm smiling, and I'm sure that you're probably maybe wondering why.
No, I got it.
Like as you're listing all of these things, would you went to yoga and Tai Chi, not my scene, but walking and working out, more my scene. Everything you just said is everything I started to do
exactly
9 years ago.
I know.
And the benefits are, that's why I don't give the power to the medication. Like I just say it's helped, but who I am today is not because I'm on just those medications. It's because of the work I did and how I began to treat my life. So you're telling me that we remove the diagnosis, we remove the medication, right? That's not, just to be clear to anybody listening, we're not telling you to do anything. Don't remove anything. Go see it. Go see Dr. Fred first. But say we were to just say, as of today, I no longer have ever received a diagnosis of type 2 bipolar disorder. I'm going to move forward. And so what I would do is potentially buy your book, because it has all the a lot of the stuff in there, right? But what it sounds like to me is invest in ourselves. and invest
Yeah,
in creating,
do good things and don't do bad things.
right? And it seems so simple, but there's so much power in that simplicity. Being of service, my whole life since 35 has been about being kind.
Yeah.
Being kind to myself, being kind to others,
Yeah.
being kind unprompted when it doesn't do anything for
Sure.
me,
Exactly.
showing people compassion and gratitude is my probably my biggest anchor.
Yeah.
Every morning I wake up, it's a mantra and a ritual that I do. It keeps me grounded, it keeps me happy. It keeps great things coming in my direction. And I have lots of boundaries when it comes to the types of people that will come into my life.
Good. Yeah.
Because people can be dangerous, not because they're going to harm you physically, but just I think their energy, the things that they do in life can harm you. So you have to be protected.
People can be toxic for sure.
So for anybody listening at home, what do you think from your perspective you would want them to do to really sort of consider what we've talked about here today?
Consider the possibility that there's nothing wrong with you.
That's it. That's simple. So consider the possibility that there is nothing wrong.
Exactly.
That's kind of powerful, but also scary. And I can see why there's controversy. I totally can see it. And because I was that person. I went needing answers or needing validation, as you said, confirmation that there was something wrong with me. And It wasn't until then. No, so people listening at home, welcome to humanity.net. Great website. Lots of things going on there. You can see the projects, podcasts. You host 3 podcasts.
I've had 3 podcasts. I've dropped 300 episodes. I've been a guest on over 200.
You're a great guest, by the way.
Thank you.
I also appreciate your patience as I'm like trying to wrap my head around what you're saying. And what's interesting is that you did definitely loosen the jar today. Not that I would say prior to today's conversation, I had really given so much thought as of late to, say, the diagnosis or the jar, but you've loosened the jar in the sense that I do recognize that it was me who needed the confirmation that there was something wrong with me.
Exactly.
Because I spent my life believing that I wasn't normal.
Exactly. I could not have said that better. Listeners, if you can hear that from your fearless hero, that's exactly what I wanted to get. Exactly.
So yeah, it's interesting. I may want to book you again for future conversations.
Let's do it anytime.
Because I think that is fascinating. So people at home, once again, if you found something that works for you and you're happy, chill.
Dude, absolutely continue doing it for sure.
100%.
Congratulations, first of all, that you have found anything in life that meets that criteria. And by all means, keep doing it.
Yes. But if you are sort of happy and still trying to figure things out, consider that there is, in the words of Dr. Fred Moss, nothing wrong with you.
It's possible. Consider the possibility. Consider the possibility.
Yeah, great conversation. I wish you the best. I know you have another book coming out, so I'm going to look out for that one. The podcast names, just for you guys to know, you will find it on Welcome to Humanity, but it's Healthy Healer Podcast, Welcome to Humanity Podcast, and then he has Insanity Podcast, but in is in the brackets. Which is really interesting after this conversation and talking to you, seeing what you did there, right?
It seems like what?
I see what you did there with the in and brackets.
Insanity. That's right. Yes. Exactly.
So, all right, everybody.
There's some radical interviews inside of that podcast. That was No Holds Barred podcast. That was Take the Gloves Off. That's a pretty cool podcast. Me and my buddy Sam that did that. So it's a good one.
I think that those radical conversations have to happen to shift mindsets, right?
I don't know if this was a radical conversation. It's sort of radical. It's important. Look, it's important to have courage. It's important to take on and be open. If you weren't open, then this conversation wouldn't have gone very far. You know,
and it's interesting because at the start of this show,
you almost didn't. You almost canceled me, dude. You almost canceled me.
Canceled you, and I'm so glad I didn't. But I'm lucky that I am self-aware enough to recognize bias when they present themselves and be like, okay, no, I'm not going to make these decisions. We're going to have this conversation. So, okay, for everybody at home, go check out welcometohumanity.net. Consider what
and I have a school group I just want to tell people about. It's school, SKOOL.com/welcome to humanity /about. And anyone who's like-minded, who wants to transform the narrative of mental health and mental illness on a global scale, please join my group. It's school, SKOOL.com /welcome to humanity /about. And it's a great site. CK, please come on. You're more than welcome. It's a free site at this point. So we're just creating founding members. And there's 80 or something members on its way to several thousand, I'm sure. And we're really out to, people who realize that the system is fractured and hasn't done them as right as they had hoped.
I'm definitely going to become a member I want to keep learning and yeah, why not? I do have one question.
The elephant allegory made it in yesterday, by the way. So
I love the elephant allegory. One question for you, and we're almost out of time. So you said that to begin sort of exploring how life looks, you have to have complete buy-in.
No. I heard myself say that. It's not exactly what I'm saying. What you have to buy in is to the possibility that there's nothing wrong with you.
Okay.
When you take away those meds and take away the diagnosis and you're like, okay, I'll give this a try, you have an exit door that says, no, obviously there's something, I didn't like what Dr. Fred said there, and so I'm going to run back to there being something wrong with me. I'm saying put some cement on that door with the possibility that you're going to do best if you get, oh, someone told me I was an elephant and I agreed. That's all that happened.
So, yes, all right. So that's perfect because you can have doubt, but in the possibility of it happening.
Exactly.
All right. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody at home, we'll see you again next week. And also, I'd love to hear about what you thought of this episode and everything that was talked about in the comments. So let the comments grow, and I will share them with Dr. Moss as well. Until next time, everybody, take care.
Thanks, CK.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@ccsims.com or visit ccsims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.